jolly sailor lads a-fishing for a whale.
Welcome to the first 2025 episode of Folk Files, and the first episode of Season 2. In this season of Folk Files, I'm going to be tackling some of the requests that I have received from listeners, starting with the song that you can hear in the background, Greenland Whale Fisheries. If I sound a little hoarse, it's because I just returned from a weekend with ARRR, the group you can hear singing, and it was pretty much non-stop sea shanties. The person who requested this episode was also there. Thank you to Megan, who I know as Pegmouth, and to her children for asking for a deep dive into this song. Over the next 25 minutes or so, I will discuss the different versions of the song, the history of the whaling industry, and a story that offers a little bit of hope when it comes to climate justice. To begin, let's talk about the two main versions of this song. The version you just heard is sometimes referred to as the Watersons version, because they are the group best known for performing it. There's a fascinating clip in the short film Traveling for a Living that features Mike Waterson trying to sing Greenland Whale Fisheries with folk singer Louis Killen, but they know slightly different versions. The way the Watersons sing it, there isn't anything that resembles a chorus or a refrain, unlike the version that Peter, Paul, and Mary know.
The lookout on the cross tree stood with a spyglass in his hand. There's a whale, there's a whale, there's a whale fish, he cried, and she blows at every span, brave boys, she blows at every span.
They repeat the final line of every verse with brave boys in between. There are also interpretations, most notably sung by David Milton, where instead of brave boys, it's break oars. Break oars makes it seem like Greenland Whale Fisheries is a shanty, since one might assume that break oars would be sung or yelled while pulling on the oars, but there doesn't seem to be any evidence that it was used as a shanty. It was mostly just a traditional ballad, but there is evidence, according to Stephen Roud, that it was a forecastle song. As a reminder, a shanty is a song sung while doing work on a ship. A forecastle song is something that is sung during leisure time on a ship. Copies of the song were found in the ship's log of the Bengal, a Salem-based ship, in 1833, and in 1849 journals found aboard the Euphrasia from New Bedford. Both of these vessels were whaling ships. The story in all the different versions of the song is vaguely the same. A crew of whalers departs for Greenland. A crew member spots a whale, and the captain orders his men to lower the boats and go after the creature. This is an accurate depiction of how people would catch whales. They couldn't hunt from their large ships. They had to pursue the whales in smaller boats much smaller than their prey, and harpoon the beasts in close quarters. It was extremely dangerous work, as the song suggests. A quick nautical vocab lesson. Davit tackles were the cranes that were attached to the smaller boats, and overhaul means to slacken the ropes. So, overhaul, overhaul, let your davit tackles fall is in order to lower the boats into the water. The Greenland Whale Fisheries crew manages to harpoon the whale. Most lyrics say struck that whale, but some say stuck that whale, suggesting that the harpoon hit the whale and stayed in its skin. However, the whale's tail hits a boat, which causes it to capsize and many men die. The number of dead men differs, but it's usually between 4 and 7. 7 men seems unrealistic, however, since according to the New Bedford Whaling Museum, there would usually be 6 men in each boat. The whale swims away, and in the final few verses, the captain of the ship gets upset. But the song makes it clear that he's more unhappy about the whale getting away than he is about his own men dying. This is perhaps the most memorable part of the song, and the part that stays the same among most modern adaptations. The cruel disregard that the captain has for the men who lost their lives trying to earn him money. The song doesn't seem to be about a specific historical event, and this is evidenced by how different the dates are. Peter, Paul, and Mary sang "'Twas in 1853 on June the 13th day." The Pogues say March 18, 1846. The Watersons use one of the latest dates, 1864, as you can hear here.
They've took us jolly sailor a-fishing for the whale. On the 4th day of August in 1864, bound for Greenland we've set sail.
It's essentially expected that two versions of the song will have different dates. In the version I started with from my old pirate crew, we sing 1851. But in the years after we recorded that, we ended up changing it to 1806, and here's why. First of all, the earliest printed version of the song was in the Mavis, a collection of songs published in Glasgow in 1820, so it doesn't make sense for the song to quote a date after that. Also, the Greenland fishing grounds were essentially depleted by 1830, so whalers had all but abandoned Greenland. Overfishing was already leading to a decline in traffic in the Greenland whale fishery by the 1790s, so an earlier date in the 19th century makes more sense. Not only that, but the peak of whaling in general was 1846 to 1852, so any years beyond that seems unrealistic. There are a couple theories about the origins of the song. Folk music historian Sabine Baring-Gould claims that the song can be traced to The Greenland Voyage from 1725's A Collection of Old Ballads. But that song seems very different. It's sung to the tune of Hey to the Temple, which is no help to me because I have no idea how that song goes and could find no mention of it except when related to the Greenland Voyage. But the meter is completely different from Greenland Whale Fisheries. Here's a sample verse. Why stay we at home now the season is come? Jolly lads, let us liquor our throats. Our interest we wrong if we tarry too long. Then all hands let us fit out our boats. Let each man prepare of the tackling his share. By neglect a good voyage may be lost. Come, I say, let's away, make no stay or delay, for the winter brings whales on the coast. It's sing-songy in a way that Greenland Whale Fisheries definitely isn't. Not only that, but it has a happy ending. The song in general is very jovial, filled with camaraderie and encouragement. The singer delivers very sweet, congratulatory messages to the crew throughout the song, like, "Well rowed, jolly trouts," and "Bravely throwed, cheerly lads," and refers to them as heroes. Unlike in Greenland Whale Fisheries, there doesn't seem to be a whiff of class distinction and cruel-hearted captains. The men mentioned in the song, Harry, Will, Robin, Ned, Tom, and Sam, are given no rankings. They are simply brave men working together to successfully bring down a whale. It's delightfully socialist, if a little bloody. It's worth mentioning that the compiler of 1725's A Collection of Old Ballads writes, "At a time when the world is wholly taken up with discourses upon whale fishery, and that we are all expecting what success one of the greatest companies in Europe will meet with in this part of their commerce, I think I can do nothing better than to present my readers with an old song written on this subject." So this song was already considered old in 1725. I don't see many connections, beyond Wales and Greenland, between this song and Greenland Whale Fisheries, but collector and folk singer A.L. Lloyd agreed with Baring-Gould that they were related. Here's Lloyd's version of the song, recorded in the 1960s, which includes an initial verse that is missing from many other performances.
We may no longer stay ashore, since we're so deep in debt. So off to Greenland we will steer, some money for to get, brave boys, some money for to get.
In his album notes, Lloyd says the following. The Dutch and English had opened up the Greenland grounds, where, by the way, they fished for right whales, not sperm whales, early in the 16th century. So the song came into being sometime between then and the opening years of the 18th. His note that early Greenland whalers did not go after sperm whales makes me think that the song arose sometime in the late 1700s, because that's when sperm whales started becoming bigger targets. And sperm whales are an important part of this song, so much so that an alternative name for the song is sperm whale fishery. Also, fun fact, right whales are called that because fishermen considered them the right whales. Like, is that the whale we're looking for? Nope, that's the wrong whale. That one is the right whale. So as for the origins of the song, we know an approximate when, but where did the song come from? As with many maritime songs, this is tricky. After all, the earliest written version is in Scotland, followed shortly afterwards by a broadside version from England, but the lyrics arguably reference what was known as the Yankee whaling trade, since the song was found on ships from Massachusetts and Connecticut. The earliest audio recording of the song is from the Bahamas. It's a 1935 field recording from Alan Lomax and Mary Elizabeth Barnicle. It features singer David Pryor performing what he called When the Whale Gets Strike, and it sounds like this.
And I lost my jolly man. No more, Greenland for you, brave boys. No more, Greenland for you.
As I mentioned in Folkfile Season 1, by the time the whaling industry collapsed, the majority of whaling crews were black. And during the peak of the whaling trade in the 1800s, there were many people of color working on board whaling vessels. So as with many folk songs, especially nautical ones, Greenland Whale Fisheries as we know it now is probably the result of many different cultural influences. When I first started researching Greenland whale fisheries, no one in the United States was talking about Greenland. I was preparing to explain that, while no one tends to know much about Greenland now, for a while it was a very important geographical location. I'm still going to talk about its past importance, but it's worth mentioning that, ironically, the day after I drafted a social media post about Greenland skimming under the radar, Donald Trump threatened to buy or invade the island. So then poor Greenland was all over the news. But the reason why Greenland was so important in the 18th and 19th centuries was not just because of whaling, but also because of the Northwest Passage, made famous to folk lovers by Stan Rogers.
For just one time, I would take the Northwest Passage to find the hand of Franklin reaching for the Beaufort Sea, tracing one warm line through a land so wide and savage, and make a Northwest Passage to the sea. Westward from the Davis Strait 'tis there 'twas said to lie, the sea route to the Orient for which so many die.
Explorers tried to find the Northwest Passage, a sailing route from the Atlantic to the Pacific, in an attempt to open up an additional shipping lane to Asia. One of the most famous expeditions was led by Sir John Franklin in 1845. This is the Franklin mentioned in the chorus of Northwest Passage. His expedition ended in scurvy, starvation, possible cannibalism, and general disaster. Artifacts from Franklin's ships were discovered in the ice for years afterwards. Sir Robert McClure mounted a rescue mission, and while he didn't rescue Franklin, he is credited as being the first European to traverse the Northwest Passage. In recent years, traveling along the Northwest Passage has become concerningly easier due to climate change. Stan Rogers' song mentions the Davis Strait, which is a body of water on the west side of Greenland. It is also mentioned in The Bonnie Ship the Diamond, a song about a whaling vessel here sung by the Canadian group Clanna Morna.
Well, the Diamond is a ship, me lads, for the Davis Straits we're bound. The Kate is all garnished with bonny lasses round. Captain Thompson gives the order to sail the ocean wide, for the sun it never sets, me lads, nor darkness fill the sky. And it's cheer up, me lads, let your hearts never fail, for the bonny ship, the Diamond, goes on to call the whale.
The Bonnie Ship the Diamond's origins are a little clearer than Greenland whale fisheries, because the lyrics mention Peterhead, a port in Scotland, multiple times as the birthing place of the Diamond. There are a few different Greenland whaling songs that originate from Scotland. Another well-known one is Farewell to Tarwathie, here performed by Judy Collins.
Farewell to Tarwathie, adieu Mormon Hill, and the dear land of Greenland, I bid thee farewell. We're bound off for Greenland and ready to sail, in hopes to find riches in hunting the whale.
Tarwathie, Crimond, and Mormont Hill are all places in Scotland. Despite how cold it can get in Scotland, the narrator speaks of his homeland fondly and paints a bleak picture of Greenland. Nothing can grow there, it's barren and bare, and there's not much except for birds and polar bears. This isn't exactly fair to Greenland. In this month's Patreon blog post, I will talk a little bit more about Greenland's history and general environment. I will also discuss the music of the Greenland Inuit. The Greenland Inuit are missing from all of these whaling songs, both unsurprisingly and disappointingly, despite the fact that they make up the vast majority of Greenland's population. So why did all of these Scottish, English, and Yankee sailors, among so many others, risk their lives over and over to visit the cold coast of Greenland and hunt whales? The answer was essentially that the world demanded it. As journalist Oliver Deer writes, whaling was a voracious industry on which half the world's economy was built. Whales provided light to people's homes before electricity, since both oil lamps and the best candles relied on whale oil. Whale oil lubricated fine machinery, allowing technological advances to occur. Arguably, the growth of industry would not have been possible without it. Whalebone was called the plastic of the 1800s because it was used in toys, clothing, walking sticks, piano keys, typewriters, etc. Whale blubber was in margarine, fertilizer, and pet food, among other things. It was even used for warfare. Blubber was used to make glycerin, which made nitroglycerin, which made bombs. The demand for whales was insane, and so crews of men put their lives on the line to slaughter the giant beasts to meet people's needs. In 1859, crude oil was discovered, but the industries of the world had built themselves so strongly around whales that it took until the mid-20th century for crude oil to be used more than whale oil. By that time, whalers learned how to go after blue whales with cannons. By the time the whaling industry collapsed, there were only 1% of Antarctic blue whales left. But this story has a hopeful ending, and one that shows what humanity can do if we try hard enough. Scientists began sounding the alarm, and in 1975, activists maneuvered an inflatable raft between a pod of sperm whales and a whaling vessel. In 1986, the International Whaling Commission issued a moratorium banning whaling worldwide. One of the main things that scientists used to gain public support was whale song. They recorded the sound of whales and essentially said to people, how could we allow this music to die out? That whale song was recorded by the Oceania Project. Of course, the moratorium isn't perfect. There are still countries that hunt whales. Also, whaling wasn't as important to the human race in the 20th century, so it was easy to put a stop to it. The moratorium may not have worked in the early 19th century when everything was essentially made out of whales. But still, the story of the whaling industry is an example of how we can work together to undo the harm that we've done to this planet. As Oliver Deer says, within just a few decades, half the global economy was restructured. Rarely in history has there been such a complete and radical reversal in the use of a natural resource. And while humanity threw everything it had at the whale, most populations have now recovered to some extent. It's a wonderful reminder that we can change. We've done it before. And keep in mind that in 1986, when the whaling moratorium was issued, Reagan was president of the United States, the same man who mounted multiple attacks against the Environmental Protection Agency. So most of these changes come about thanks to the work of grassroots movements. This means that even if you're on a ship where the captain cares more about losing out on the money from an escaped whale than the death of 4 to 7 sailors, all is not lost. you can still change the ship's course inch by inch. I will end this episode on Greenland Whale Fisheries with the rest of the Watersons version of the song. Before I go, a quick announcement. If you want to see my social media posts but you aren't on social media, you can become a free member of my Patreon. I will be posting weekly or bi-weekly digests of my social media posts filled with fun facts, episode teasers, and podcast announcements. If you would like to request a song for Folk Files to cover, feel free to send me an email at folkfilespodcast@gmail.com or send me a message on social media. As always, thanks for listening.
With a spyglass in his hand. There's a whale, there's a whale, there's a whale fish, he cried. And she blows at every span. The captain stood on the quarter deck, and a sort of a man was he. Overhaul, let your davy tackles fall, and we'll launch them boats to sea. We struck that whale and the line played out, but she gave a flurry with her tail, and the boat capsized, we lost 7 of our men, and we never caught that whale. Now the losing of 7 fine seamen, it grieved the captain sore, but the losing of a bloody sperm whale, oh, it grieved him 10 times more. Now Greenland is a horrid place where our fisher lads have to go, where the rose and the lily never bloom in spring.